Let's check in with the doc and look at things with a wider lens. Pastor Richards on OMG.
All right, so we're going to wait for that call from Pastor Richards. He's going to join us shortly. In the meantime, I'll go ahead and read. Oh, I think he's calling. So we'll put hold on that. Good morning, Dr. Richards.
Hey, good morning, Danielle. And good morning to
Shady.
Shady. And the rest of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, whether you're in the physical environs here at St. Vincent and the Grenadines or wherever you are in your VNC. And to the rest of the world that's listening, good morning to you. And I trust that you had a very meaningful Easter weekend here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It was a rather quiet one for a change, and I suspect that gave people the opportunity to reflect, and I hope that at some point you did reflect on the meaning of that sacred holiday, particularly on the fact that the Easter Sunday was a time to remember that our Lord Jesus Christ, who died, actually rose again. And that is very significant, from death into life. And that because he rose again from the dead, he says, listen, in John 25, story of Lazarus, he actually said that if you die, you will live again. And it gives hope for a new life, that even when things seem crucified or things seem dead, beyond any kind of comeback whatsoever, beyond your wildest possibility and dreams and hopes that something can come back out of your ashes, out of what is falling apart in your life. All of the topsy-turvy and the pulling down of structures that have held together your life, when all of that is pulled apart, can it come back together? I'm not just talking economy and health and all these issues, I'm talking even spiritually. Can things that have fallen apart royally ever come back together? And the resurrection story says yes. Even when death is very, very present, there is the possibility of life. And that's only true in Jesus Christ. So I hope that everyone had that time of hope that Easter brings, and that you had that this weekend. Okay? Just had to say that. Hello?
Thank you, Pastor.
Okay, I just want to make sure that
Definitely here with you.
You're here with me. Daniel, you know something you do, you just let me talk,
Well, like I said, sometimes that's needed.
Okay, but but I have to say this. Feel free to. It's not interrupt. Feel free to interject at any point.
I will.
You will, okay. But I've been thinking about COVID as I came out of the weekend. I really did not listen. To be honest with you, I did not listen to any news on COVID over the weekend. It was all too terrible and too depressing, and I didn't want that. As I said to some people, I didn't want to focus on death on Easter weekend when the real story on Easter weekend is about life. And so I chose not to focus on all of the morbid stories of death. But coming out of the weekend, I started giving my attention to what is upon us, COVID. But I want to think, hear me well, I want to think about COVID-19 with my eyes and my ears open. And not just to take what they're telling me, but to think it through. Now, don't get me wrong. COVID-19 is a very rare phenomenon. Very rare. Cannot deny the devastating effect that it is having on certain parts of the world. Not everywhere in the same fashion. You would agree with me. I think you would agree with me. I have tried to posit certain reasons as to why COVID-19 is behaving differently in certain regions than in others, or why certain countries are way more devastated by COVID-19 than other countries. But people were not ready for that kind of discussion. So I'll just let the reality speak for itself, where U.S., for example, has over half of the world's COVID cases, I think around 500,000 or thereabout, over 500,000 in the U.S. And they have not tested even 1% of their population as yet. Don't let that fact go unnoticed. That, listen, the great, mighty U.S. have not, please hear me, have not tested 1%, not even 1% of their population as yet. But even so, the devastation there is real. With New York, what's happening in New York, if New York were a country, it would have the most deaths from COVID. So I know that there is devastation in certain parts of the world. It is real. It is not imagined. It is not a hoax. It is not fake news. COVID-19 is real. In certain parts of the world, it is really wielding a big stick. And I keep asking myself why, okay? I mean, it is okay for me to ask why. Why it is happening like this in certain parts of the world. For example, as compared to St. Vincent, and I continue to be grateful that our COVID news, people keep saying, all hell is going to break loose, and they said that to me on March the 12th and the 13th. In fact, around the 12th of March, someone said, wait until the next weekend, it's all going to fall to pieces. And so, that next weekend came and it didn't all fall to pieces. There was not death and devastation sweeping across St. Vincent. And somebody said, give it 2 weeks, 14 days, you will see. Well, it's been about a month now, and I am still thankful. I mean, don't whip me for this, okay? I am still thankful that our story here in St. Vincent, I'm not throwing shades at New York or anywhere else. I'm just saying that I'm thankful that our story is our story. You know what our story is. I know what our story is. The world and country know what our story is. So I'm thankful our story is our story, and it is not what, is happening elsewhere. But there are a number of things that I am being watchful for, and I am concerned about as I watch the COVID-19 phenomenon unfold. There's some things that just cause me to brinker. And I'm like, what? What's really going on here? And some things just don't add up. Some things just don't add up with the way this is unfolding with COVID. I'm going to tell you two stories to help you to understand. The first one is about the Jewish scapegoat. Now, the Jewish have a religious holiday called Yom Kippur. I think it's, later on in the year, maybe September or sometime, they're going to celebrate this, but it is referred to in Leviticus. It's the most sacred holiday for the Jewish people, same like how Easter is the most sacred holiday for Christian people. And the ceremony is similar. In the Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement, that's what it is, the Jews will have the scapegoat. Well, the scapegoat is one of a pair. There are actually two goats. One is the sacrificial one that is going to be sacrificed again. This is for atonement, to pay for. Atonement means to pay for. And then the scapegoat, the second one of the pair, the scapegoat, Daniel, is the priest who is performing the ceremony, symbolically places all the sins of the Israelite people upon the head of the scapegoat, and that scapegoat is seen as anathema because it is now bearing the sins of the people, anathema cursed, bearing the sins of the people, and it is chased out into the wilderness, desert, or whatever you want to call it, but it is chased away, and in that chasing away, it carries the sins that are not its own. It carries them away from it. In other words, it gets wrong blame. That's the scapegoat. It gets wrong blame. All right, remember that. The scapegoat gets wrong blame. All right, and again, that comes from Yom Kippur. The second story is one of the Trojan horse. As you know, Helen, who was the queen of Sparta. Sparta was from the mighty Greece. And Sparta was known for its fighting men, real fierce fighting men. But Troy, which was an independent city, was not under the control of Greece. As mighty as Greece was, Troy was not under the control of Greece. And Paris, who was the son of, I think, Priam, King Priam. I have to double-check that. But I think Paris was the romantic son of King Priam, and I think he had kind of a relationship with Helen. And so he abducted her. Well, she went with him and went to Troy. This was quite a slap in the face of not just the Sparta fighting men, but of Greece. And so they're like, no, this is not happening. We are the mighty Greece. We coming for Helen. And so they declared war with Troy. Became the Trojan War, the Greek record Trojan War. They declared war with Troy, and but for some reason they could not, hear this, for some reason they could not conquer Troy. Yeah, I mean, where other cities would have fallen, Troy did not fall. Troy did not fall. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 8 years, 10 years. They came with all of their mighty ships, the armada, and laid siege to Troy, and Troy will not fall. So after 10 years of fruitless effort, they decided, you know what, we got to do something. So they built this magnificent horse and took it up to the city of Troy, which had very mighty gates. And then you couldn't get past those gates to get into Troy. That's why Troy was so invincible. And they left the horse outside the gate. But unbeknownst to the people of Troy, they had filled, the people of Sparta had filled the hollow of the horse, the belly of the horse, with their best fighting men, their best warriors. And so they strategically, remember that word, left the horse outside of the gate of Troy. All of this I'm thinking about COVID. They left the horse, follow me, they left the horse outside of the gate of Troy and went back to their ships and pretended to sail away. During the night, the late evening, the people of Troy came out and pulled the horse, opened their gates, pulled the horse inside. I mean, the people pulled the horse. They were the ones to bring in the horse. They were the ones to do it. They brought the horse inside and left it right there because that was their trophy of war. And they left the horse right there. Now, during the night, the men came out, the Spartan men came out of the horse while all of Troy slept. And they opened the gates, and all of the other soldiers who had pretended to sail away came back. And they raided the city of Troy and so had their victory finally, what they could not have had in any other way, what they could not have had in any other way, what they could not accomplish in any other way, they accomplished through the Trojan horse. And the great tragedy of that story is that it was the people of Troy, who were invincible otherwise, who actually opened the doors to pull this thing in and let it happen. So those are two stories I thought I'd tell you, the scapegoat and the Trojan horse. And as I watch, why my entire body is brinkling is the fact that I cannot help but think that there's some kind of scapegoat issue going on with COVID-19, or some kind of Trojan horse issue, because there is a conquest that is taking place right before my eyes. I find that I'm saying things, and then a week or two later I hear others saying it across the world. Not that they're listening to me, mind you, but you have to see ahead. This world is in transition. I hear people talk about going back to it for the way it was. Nah, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. The COVID-19 is real. But and I heard Jerry say it this morning, and that was prescient of Jerry to say that. He's seeing something here. The opportunism and the way people are capitalizing on the COVID-19. Jerry, you are right. Jerry, you are right. People are capitalizing on COVID-19 and using it as a Trojan horse to introduce things and transitions that they could not otherwise introduce. be watchful. This is a real, don't get me wrong, I am saying this is a real thing. I'm not denying the devastation. I'm not denying the reality of this phenomenon called COVID-19. I am just saying that it is being used, and the way it is being blamed, it is becoming a scapegoat. Remember that scapegoat? And forgive me for mixing my metaphors, but what is introducing, what could not be introduced otherwise? Because in no other dimension do I hear and see people in democratic societies saying, lock us down, please, lock us down. We are willing to give up our freedom and beg, please take our freedom, please invade our privacy, please do it, please take away our individual rights, what we thought were inalienable rights. I'm not talking St. Vincent, by the way. I'm talking about the opening lines from the U.S. Constitution, so don't get me wrong. Take away our rights, please, beg you. They're behaving like the people of Troy. I mean, these are things that people will bleed for and die for. But in this instant, they are begging, please, take away our freedom. They will gladly, I have never seen any dispensation of time in which people will gladly surrender their civil liberties. And when your civil liberties are not taken from you, then you argue and you criticize. Why are you not taking our civil liberties? People will trade off in a heartbeat, and I'm watching with amazement the ease with which people are willing to trade their freedom and their privacy and their individual right for a sense of security. Security matters to people, and they will give up these otherwise inalienable things to get security. We have to be very careful. What kind of world are we moving to? There are those who are like the Spartans. There are those who are going to capitalize and are willing, and like Jerry said this morning, are willing, whether for G20 purposes or other purposes. They will not let a good crisis go to waste. It is there to be leveraged. I'm using some terms here. And COVID-19 is a crisis that can be leveraged to do some things that you could not do otherwise. I mean, I'm watching the introduction of what had been on Pike, and these are things that the Bible actually talks about. I used to ask myself, how can this happen where there's this one world government? How can this happen where there's such authoritarianism, where you can have the George Orwell's Big Brother syndrome? How could that happen when people are thinking? And I'm realizing how easily it could happen. In the time of crisis, in the time of severe crisis, and particularly when the crisis is exacerbated by the numbers that are being pumped and pushed, the negative numbers. Mind you, I notice that a lot of the positive numbers are not being pushed and pumped. But the negative numbers are being pushed and pumped because these are necessary for the kind of transition that we want for this world. We want a transition in which I've seen it. I watched a lot of articles over the weekend. Well, not over the weekend, but leading into the weekend, actually. Last week, Thursday or Friday, I think it was Thursday, I saw something coming out of China where a guy was able to put a chip in his phone as he entered China. He was able to put a chip in his phone. They could monitor him wherever he went. And if he did not, and if that chip doesn't light up green, then he can't get into hotels or he can't get into other places. He is excluded. There goes privacy. I've heard in Russia where they're using drones to monitor where people go. I've heard of another country, I can't remember where it is, where you are allowed to leave your apartment, but you are being monitored by technological facilities. You're being monitored so that you can't go, I think, 100 meters or something away from your apartment. You can't. This kind of big brother monitoring is upon us, and it could not be possible without COVID, and people are actually accepting it, and I'm saying we okay with this. I watched in the U.S. Again, coming into the weekend, I watched where this, and Rachel, what's her name I think Rachel Maddows, I think is her name, but she was the first one I saw reported on it, where you can have this chip or this app in your phone that measures your temperature, and that they could see where your temperature is rising. They could monitor you, see where your temperature is rising. All of this basically is now introducing what I would like to call telemedicine, where from you are in your home, but artificial intelligence can do your diagnosis, monitor you, every single citizen, where it can remotely, there's a chip that can remotely tell you if you're running a fever. I saw Rachel Meadows reporting on that. Tell you if you're exercising, that can measure your vitals. What's happening in this world? We are now being herded into a reality by COVID that otherwise we would have fought tooth and nail. And right now we are willing to accept it. Let me wrap up because I don't have the whole of time. But as a result of COVID, what I am watching, like I said, I'm keeping my eyes and ears open. And there's a whole lot more to say about this. I'm not even very articulate because I'm watching it, trying to put my thoughts together. But as I keep my eyes and ears open, COVID-19 has now become a platform. This very rare phenomenon has become a platform, a scapegoat, Trojan horse, call it what you want. But to introduce some new things to change the world as we know it. And whether you like it or not, the truth is, for whatever purposes, our world is changing to a world that we didn't know, and we are not going to return to the world that we knew. Our relationships, all of our fundamental relationships are changing through this Trojan horse. Our relationships with one another. People can't even, listen to this, Daniel, people can't even be at the bedside of somebody who is dying. And there's rationalization and justification for that. And people accept that. People accept that. People accept that when you're dying or you're going into incubation, that you take an iPad and you say goodbye to your family and you go and die with some stranger holding your hand, perhaps. Personal relationships are changing and we are accepting it. Our relationship with one another, our relationship with the government is changing. Our relationship, whether it was a fourth estate relationship or our relationship as citizens of a democracy, that is shifting towards a more authoritarian style, where we are willing to accept what would have been the order of the day in an authoritarian country. But in democracies across the world, we are willing to accept what was prior referred to as authoritarian. So our relationship now with the government, we are actually saying to the government, take us over, shut us down, please. And if you don't do it, you're the worst government in the world. Our relationship with the government is changing right before our eyes. Our relationship with church is changing. We have to understand that churches, like mine did, went online. I actually, on Saturday, we gave out the emblems of the Lord's Supper, Daniel, the bread and the wine. People came and collected them at the church. As we did our live broadcast on Sunday, they were able to follow from their homes, and when it came to the time of the Lord's Supper, they were able to partake. Even all across the world, somebody from UK and people from Massachusetts and elsewhere, from Texas and elsewhere, even my daughter even sent a picture and said, Daddy, look, my bread and my wine, I partook of the thing. Our relation, it's changing. Everything is changing. How we do business, and I'm going to end here, how we do business, that is changing. I saw last night that Amazon, I think it is Amazon, whoever delivers, Amazon, I think it is, about to hire 75,000 new people, because delivery is the order of things. People are not doing business anymore in personal transaction, and when we move to a post-COVID world, it is not going to be business the way it used to be. A lot of it is going to be online delivery. Why do you think they have been lining up these kind of monetary services, cryptocurrency and chip card, virtual card? Why have we been using Samsung Pay? Somebody knew this was coming, right? Somebody knew. Somebody knew that the digital dollar, which they're trying to squeeze in, somebody knew that this is where the world is going. And the way we do business, all of our relationships are going to change. Meetings, you're going to have to Zoom all your meetings. And having gone to the effectiveness of Zoom meetings, I don't see a lot of people en masse moving back out of that because, look, it can be done. Let's do it. Trump said, man, we don't even want to go back to shaking hands anymore. So you don't close a deal with shaking of your hands. Let me tell you something. believe it or not, I am watching with my eyes and my ears open. COVID is a real phenomenon, but COVID is also a scapegoat, and COVID is a Trojan horse. And some things that could not be done before are being done now by third parties who benefit from these changing relationships with one another, with the government, with the church, and with the business world. There will be more I have to say on this, but I just want to share some of my thoughts, not in the most articulate way, but I have some deep thoughts on what is happening with COVID. All right, I hope this may have been helpful to